Morning, folks. I almost started this webinar without my shirt on. Anyway, that would have been a weird look. All right. Hope everybody's doing okay this morning. A little discombobulated here. Just washed my hair. Everybody doing okay this morning? I'm going to open up my chat box so I can make sure that I am in the right place and you all are in the right place. All right. And then, so I got my chat box open. So, how are we feeling today? I am feeling great for some reason. Got some sleep last night, huh? It's amazing what that stuff will do. So how are you all feeling? Put it in the chat box. Good morning. Good morning, all. Can everybody hear me okay? Oh, nobody said, maybe I get my mic on. Do I have my mic on? Feeling great, feeling great. I'm great. All right, so I guess you can't hear me because I asked the question that I asked. All right. Let's see. What do we want to talk about today? We're going to go ahead and get started on our talk in just a second. But first of all, I want to say I'm glad everybody is here. And I want to kind of go over some of the things we've gone over in the past. Because you can teach about a particular topic, and some people will get it, some people won't get it, but we have to kind of go over it again. The video that I'm going to go is a review of something that we went over, and it's combined with some other things. What I want to do is stop the video and explain it. So again, we learn more and more as we go along. All right. We're going to learn about the foods that we need to eat, the exercises we need to do, the amount of fiber we need to take in, the protein we need to take in. Last week, I asked you all and I didn't forget, last you all I asked you, okay, fine. I can teach and teach and teach, but, teaching gives us opportunity. Opportunity gives us potential. But potential without action is not what we really want to think about. So I asked you all to do something last week, and what were you all going to do this during that week, and then to put it in the chat box, and we'll get to that. I'm going to ask you, what did you do this week based upon what you learned last week, the week before, and all the weeks before that? What did you do as far as action is concerned? Because that's what I want to do, is to figure out a way that we can hold each other accountable. Because I'm going to tell you what I did, what I'm going to do today. Because last Saturday I told you I was going to do some workout. I did a chest workout. It was grueling. And the reason it was grueling was because I was telling you about progressive resistance training. And I said, let me, and I tried to video it, but trying to video yourself and all that. But I used some of the lightest weights I could. I found some 15-pound dumbbells, 15 pounds, to do some chest presses, right? But the resistance training that I was doing, the progressive resistance training, I used full range of motion, and I basically came down as slow as I could, exploded up to the top, and came down as slow as I could. No, 15 pounds. Now, I normally could do a little bit more than that normally, but man, that kicked my butt. Just 15 pounds of chest press is doing 3 sets. And I did high reps and I did that very, very, very slow. So that's what I'm talking about, progressive range of motion. You don't have to get heavy weights. You don't have to get very, very, very tight resistance bands. You can get a small amount, and basically, we'll talk about different techniques, different strategies to get that progressive resistance training. Because what that did for me the next day is I was sore. I was feeling it. So when you ever feel that inflammation or feel that soreness, that means you worked muscle fibers that weren't getting excited before. Okay. So there we go with that. All right. I'm gonna give people time to check in. Put my goggles on. And like I said, we're gonna talk about some things that are gonna be interesting today. I'm gonna try to make an impact on your lives. And I'm gonna try to make that impact by giving you information, but again, asking you to be accountable to me as a coach, and maybe you can be a coach to me as well. I'm going to show you some things that of a couple examples of patients' laboratory values that I've checked. To give you an idea as to what it is our program looks for and how we do it. We just don't do everything by willy-nilly. We don't just, or at least we try not to. But we check lab work. And that lab work is like me checking your numbers on a scale, like me checking your blood pressure, like me checking your temperature. I have to have numbers to let me know whether or not we're progressing in the right direction or not. And the numbers that I've used uh, have been defined, but they're not my numbers, but the numbers that have been defined in research as to the numbers we're supposed to be looking at to look at our metabolic health, our metabolic health. Okay. Um, no longer, nor should anybody just who's on the GLP-1 therapy, who's on a diet, or who's having bariatric surgery, should they ever just look at their weight? That's probably the worst number out there. I'd rather you look at your waist to height ratio. Anybody know what the waist to height ratio is? Have you heard of that? Take a little um, tape measure somewhere I have around here. Measure around the waist. I showed it last time. Measure around the waist and then divide that by your height in inches. Okay? Should be below 50. All right? If it's not below 50, we've got some work to do. Next, then, once we get to a certain point in this talk, I'm going to show you some lab work, some very worrisome lab work, and some lab work that's not so bad, and is getting better with the therapy. But therapy has to be measured. It has to be measured. You don't even go to the hospital and with pneumonia without getting a chest X-ray and then getting a repeat chest X-ray to see if you've gotten any better, do you? No. It's like your cough is gone, your fever is gone, everything looks good. I'm going to just go ahead and let you go. No, they won't do that. They'll get another chest X-ray to make sure that pneumonia is gone. And that is what we're doing. We're basically there's a certain amount of lab work that we do, certain tests that we do. If you've been in my office, one of the tests that we commonly do before surgery is a CPET, cardiopulmonary exercise test. That lets me know how your heart is. Now, most of the patients don't do too well on that test. It's because we're deconditioned. But the goal is to do whatever it is, the GLP-1s or the surgery, and to become very, very knowledgeable about what we're doing to our bodies to become deconditioned, and then begin to reverse those using the tools of bariatric surgery and the teaching as to anti-inflammatory foods and exercise and fiber, and then measure it again to see if it's improved. And I'm here to tell you that most of the time, not all the time, and that tells me something, most of the time, the lab work improves. Most of the time, the VO2 max, which is that cardiorespiratory system that we're talking about, I wish more people would get that because that is the one single indicator as to longevity that's been measured in the literature over and over and over again. Better than your hemoglobin A1C, better than your HSCRP, better than all that stuff. All right. Ask me for it. That's how you say, Doc, can I get one of those tests again? You got it right there in your back room. Can you do that test on me? I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you. All right. So let's go ahead and get into what we're getting into. Let's see here. Everybody's doing good. Somebody asked me how I'm feeling. I'm feeling great. How do I look? Do I look like I'm tired? Nope, I don't. So somebody put in the waist to hip, no waist to height. Your waist. Let me see if I can. Okay, so here, this is my my iliac crest here. This is my anterior superior iliac spine here. Don't quote me on all this kind of stuff. I'm not. But this is the iliac crest. You can feel your hip bones, right? You can feel them right here. This is my belly button right here. Okay, so it's just below my belly button, but it's at my hip bone. Okay, you put that tape around that area there, and you measure that. That's your waist. Okay, and you keep using that. That's going to be a consistent point. You're going to use that. Then you know how tall you are. You're 5'5". 5 feet times 12 is 60, and 5 more inches on that is 65. So you measure that waist to height ratio. You measure that number. That top number is your waist. The top bottom number is your height. It needs to be below 50. If it's above 50, then again, we got work to do, right? All right. All righty. Okay. What should I start with first? Let me just go ahead and get and then just go ahead and the chat box is open. Very informal here. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do here. But I wanted to ask you, so those of you who came last week and we said, okay, let's do something this week. What did you do? Put it in the chat box. Just tell me what did you do based upon what you not only learned last week, but what did you learn the week before or the week before that? Because if I'm going to ask you these things every week, and I am, and I want you to feel positive about yourself and to be able to tell me that you did something. Because I can teach and teach and teach all day long, and I know you're getting bored of it, but I need to see the needle move. I need to see you getting better. Okay. Now, if you tell me you're doing something, then I'm going to say, that's a good thing. And then we're going to teach a little bit more to fine tune it, to make you even better, healthier, happier, longer living. All right. Because then we're going to measure your actual parameters. So I'm going to give you an example of one of the disappointing things with me when a person came to me and they were prescribed GLP-1 drugs. Lost 97 pounds. Lost 97 pounds. And I measured the lab work. What I didn't prescribe the GLP-1 drugs, by the way. They came to me because they said, I'm starting to regain the weight and I don't feel as great. And here's my lab work that I got. I'm going to show you that lab work. And I'm going to show you why looking at that scale is not the answer. Okay. All right. Let's get into it. All right. All right. So the people who I said grateful, Dr. I have felt this good in 3 years. Thank you for I've been walking 30 minutes and doing strength training. Great. I've been taking my fiber. Beautiful. Tracking everything. Added a lot more protein. Very good. My protein. Increased strength workouts to 3 times a week. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. All right. Put my glasses back over before. Let me try if I can share my slides with you. I'm going to share my desktop. Hopefully, I don't have anything on there that I don't need on there. Let's see. Let me go down and get my PowerPoint presentation. That ain't it. That's not the one. There we go. Let's try that one. That's the one. All right, y'all can recognize that. I always start with that. If that slide gets too boring for you, let me know. I'll change it up. But that slide means a lot to me because it says life's not just about living longer. It's about living healthier longer. Okay? It's about living healthier longer. And basically, our metabolism is based upon these four principles. Very, very, very simple. And some of you mentioned them in the chat box, and I really appreciate the fact that you're listening. Because if you're able to manage these four principles, you got your health that's going to improve. I always want to pause because I'm getting ready to say, I guarantee it. I can't guarantee you anything, but I'd be reasonably willing to bet you a nickel that you'll get better over a period of time. Not tomorrow, not as fast as you'd like to. We're not that kind of society anymore where we're going to get everything tomorrow. But that consistency is going to make you feel so much better. Fasting. Fasting gets rid of the boo-boo in your system. I call it boo-boo. But you have damaged cells. You have senescent cells. Senescent means old cells. And our system to get rid of those old cells has deteriorated as we age. We need to revitalize that system. That system happens when our insulin level is almost zero, and it's called fasting. What happens when we fast? What happens when we go a period of time without eating food for 14, 16, 18 hours? Our insulin levels drop. That opens up a system in our body called autophagy. Autophagy is the bowel movement of our body. The bowel movement of our intestine is a bowel movement, okay? But our bodies have to get rid of those bad cells that can turn into tau cells or amyloid plaques that go into your brain, cause dementia, cause Alzheimer's. They can cause mitochondrial damage, and mitochondria even die. Those same mitochondria that you had when you were born, you don't have them anymore. They're dead. Whether the fragments are around or not, we don't know. But those fragments, if they're left to die, it's just like anything else. Leave something in your refrigerator for a few years and then open that refrigerator door. It's going to be a bad smell and it's going to be rotten. All right. And that's what's going on in our body. But we can change it by fasting. Okay. And fasting is a little bit more than, okay, I ate last night at 8 o'clock and I ate this morning again at 8 o'clock. This breakfast, I fasted 12 hours. The studies show that you have to fast at least 14 to 16 hours before fasting really takes effect. You don't have to fast every single day. I happen to because I that's my routine now. But to have that effect of getting rid of the senescent cells, the obsolete cells, the bad cells that are producing cytokines, and cytokines are poison. It's just kind of sitting there, just poison, stuff in your refrigerator, and you had to open the door for a while. Getting rid of that is called autophagy, and it happens when we fast at least 14 hours. Okay. All right. Fitness. We're going to be talking about fitness. Everybody put it in the chat box, and I appreciate it. I'm beginning to walk more. I'm increasing my resistance training. I want to hope that's going to be, as we learn more about that, it's going to be progressive resistance training. I don't expect you to do what that person is doing right there. I don't do that. But like I was saying, I have 15-pound dumbbells that I use, and that kicked my butt. 15-pound dumbbells. I'm a grown man. All right. All right. Then fiber. It's important fiber. Put it in the chat box. How much fiber are we supposed to take? You all have been here over with me long enough that you know how much fiber you're supposed to take in a day. All right, when are you supposed to take fiber and what kind of fiber? We've been talking about this ad nauseum. Okay. You ought to be able to tell me. And then protein, one of the most important things. And I'm going to show you some conglomeration of some of the tools that we have. But how much protein are you taking in every single day? If you're taking in less than 100 grams, you hadn't been listening. Ugh, it's coffee again. I usually take over with just my mate. But I said, let me try coffee again. Black. Because I'm still fasting. Anyway, all right. Let's see. Secrets to getting more fiber. Okay. Yeah, here it is right here. I always give you that secret. Soluble fiber. Soluble fiber is balanced. Now, this is $40 a month, right? Get that. I'll put it in the chat box where you get it from. I think, yeah. And basically, as a matter of fact, I got to put something else. Some of y'all don't even know my website. I got a brand new website. But anyway, that amount of fiber, I take that fiber, uh, you know, 7 to 10 grams before my meals. Why do I do that? Fiber controls your blood sugar. You control your blood sugar, you control your insulin. You control your insulin, you control all the diseases that root themselves with insulin resistance. I'll teach that over and over and over again until it finally clicks and somebody's, I get it. Most disease processes, including high blood pressure, dementia, sleep apnea, diabetes, hypertension, cancers, all began, within most of us, in insulin resistance. And if we start attacking insulin resistance, we can basically make our lives better. Okay? All right. So the fiber is basically a sponge. You take that before you take your meal. And I want you to be a little bit more cognizant of the meals you take in. But this is your seatbelt, just in case a piece of bread happens to attack you. I know we've kind of gotten away from bread, haven't we? Pizza, pasta, all that stuff. We've gotten away from that, haven't we? If we haven't, we will. But just in case you do, I always take your fiber because your fiber not only is your absorption of that glucose that keeps your insulin down, it also is the absorption of your LDL cholesterol. The LDL cholesterol, I got one of my people on here. I've redacted the names. Don't worry, I'm not going to show you stuff. I got one of my people on here who hadn't been taking their fiber, and they feel fine though. They feel just fine, but they're at risk. Okay. All right, so the fiber is also the food for our microbiome. Our microbiome goes through a process of control. It's our second brain. It controls our processes in our body. It produces short chain fatty acids, acetate, propionate, and butyrate. The butyrate being the most powerful. And that butyrate is the same thing we get when we're on a ketogenic diet. But that butyrate helps us release more GLP-1, which gives us some good things. Everybody thinks that GLP-1 that we get is just for weight loss. No, no. I'm going to give you a real brief history. Is the GLP-1 drugs, the reason that we like them so much is because when we discovered it back in 1993, when we were doing bariatric surgery in 1993, we said, man, this person had type 2 diabetes. It's a month later, 2 months later, and they hadn't really lost any significant amount of weight, but their type 2 diabetes is better. Their fasting hemoglobin A1C after 3 months was tremendously better. And they only lost a few pounds. So we said there's something else going on. And it happened to be GLP-1 that was going on. So that point is to say that there was a benefit of GLP-1 that came from the intestinal tract. That's where it came from, our L cells in our intestinal tract. It's a benefit of that GLP-1 above and beyond losing weight. Now, the big pharma markets out there as a weight loss drug because they got other drugs for your blood pressure. They got other drugs for your high cholesterol. They don't want to cut into the billions of profit on those two entities. So they don't tell you much about the anti-inflammatory effects of GLP-1. I use GLP-1 drugs as an anti-inflammatory drugs that happens to help you lose weight. I don't switch it around. I don't say this is a weight loss drug. Oh, and it has some anti-inflammatory effects. No, no. I use it as I'm going after the anti-inflammatory effects first. Oh, and by the way, you may lose a few pounds if you want to. If you don't want to lose a few pounds, then we microdose it. Keep it down to a certain level. But the important point about GLP-1 that we're activating in our own body, and if I had to, I'll supplement it, is for the inflammation. All right. So that butyrate from the fiber going to the microbiome, for the metabolism microbiome to give you butyrate, increases your activation of your body's own GLP-1, your anti-inflammatory effect. All of this stuff is going to go together pretty soon. Okay, all right, here we go. Insulin resistance is the cause of these things. We see it right here. High blood pressure, type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes, obesity. And now everybody thought that insulin resistance was just had anything to do with type 2 diabetes. Well, I'm not insulin resistant because I'm not a diabetic. Well, obesity is a symptom of insulin resistance. Heart attack and stroke is a symptom of insulin resistance that's been unchecked. Sleep apnea and fatty liver, especially fatty liver, as a symptom of insulin resistance and some cancers and some dementia. Okay. All right. Tell you a quick story here. Make it interesting. So one of my patients, good patient, doctor, good doctor, internal medicine, I believe. Yeah. And beautiful family came to me because had problems with the insulin resistance and the weight, and some other issues as well. And this person, looking here, beautiful person, beautiful face, beautiful personality. But again, had some problems. I wanted to be around for the children and all that. And then she sent me this medal after I did the surgery. I forget what kind of surgery we did. We did the surgery a little while later, maybe a couple of years later. She sent me this, hey, look what I got. I says, cool, where'd you find that? Find it. I earned this, doc. I said, well, what is it? It was a medal. It was a medal of honor, actually. It was a medal because she won it in this kind of a contest. She listened to the things we said, and that insulin resistance, because of the protein intake, the muscle, the resistance training, the fiber intake, decreasing the amount of inflammation in our body by decreasing the amount of inflammatory food. Got her this, got her this, got that big old medal. That's what it was around her neck. I think the medal is almost as big as she is. Anyway, I said to myself, that's cool. But she goes from here to here. She's a much healthier person. Has always been beautiful, but now she's got a shot, and she's gonna keep that shot a long time. A shot at life, a shot at good life. Okay. Now, I kind of started like that too. Me personally, I said I'm not gonna let her just beat me. So I started here. This is me back in the day, 205 pounds down from 210. Thought I lost 5 pounds, I was going to get better. But I had pre-diabetes. I had atrial fibrillation, which is pretty scary because you know what atrial fibrillation can cause. You don't want to have that. As a result of that atrial fibrillation, over a long period of time, I had congestive heart failure. Now, I'm not that old of a person back in this days right here. I'm not that old of a person now either. I had hypertension as well. And so I says, she can do it, I can do it. This is a fictitious story because obviously I did this before she did her. But anyway, sounds good. Yep, this is all me. I'll take a side photo. I says, yeah, okay. Can I make that look any better by taking this angle photo? I didn't. This thing, visceral fat, liver fat, all because of my body and my organs were insulin resistant. I said, okay, let me try one other thing. Let me try it in a different room, and let me try it at a more slighter angle, and see if I can suck it in. Anytime you see me purse my lips like that, I'm really sucking it. I'm holding my breath. I hadn't turned blue yet because. So anyway, I says, okay, I'm trying to suck it all in. That didn't work either. Okay. But here's when it started doing it. Here you go. I'll go from this person now to this person. This is Dr. D's fitness transformation. How about them apples? Y'all know that ain't true. Y'all know this is AI, right? No, that is AI. I thought I'd throw that in as a joke. Some people hope y'all didn't believe that. That's me today. All right. That's me today. And that's me now pursing my lips again, sucking it in. I'm down to 167, 168 pounds there. So that's me sucking it in here, me trying to suck it in here. So that's me today. But guess what happened? Guess what happened? My prediabetes went away. My atrial fibrillation went away. My congestive heart failure went away. Exercise better. Because I started practicing what I was been preaching all these years. So I'll continue preaching. So if you have your health, you have hope. And when you have hope, you have everything. And my everything is going to eventually be this to this. I still got hope. Like Jesse Jackson used to say, keep hope alive. All right. One other thing. This is the lab work I was talking about. Let me make sure I did. Yep, the name was redacted. Okay. This is the lab work I was talking about. This just came in a short time ago to me. I hadn't gotten all of the things. We normally get all of this stuff over here. Fasting, glucose fasting, insulin, hemoglobin A1C, vitamin D. Then get free T4, the waist circumference, and blood pressure and all that. That's so all these things over here I look at. I just got this in. Like I said, I'm waiting on these results over here. My interpretation of these things are over here. Triglyceride to HDL ratio. That's the triglyceride level on your your lipid profile, HDL ratio. That looks okay, but it's not as specific as I'd like it to be. Is there something else going on? Problem is that the ApoB, which is probably the most specific thing out there, ApoB. All right. I want it to be optimal. I want it to be optimal. I want it to be less than 90. It's not. ApoB, what is it? Apolipoprotein B. It's the number of particles, LDL containing particles out there, including the VLDL and all that. The number of particles on the highway is more important than the size of them. They all have a little bit to do with it. But if you just imagine you're in a tunnel going in New York City, you're in a tunnel, and there's a bunch of little small cars on there, as opposed to a few small cars on there. There's a bunch of little cars in there, and they're basically banging into that nice tile of the tunnel. They're going to injure that tile of the tunnel. Think of that tile of the tunnel as the inside of your blood vessels. When you chip that tile of the tunnel, because there's so many and they're trying to get around each other, one car moves over to another lane, bumps into the wall, it's chip on the tile, right? That tile then becomes damaged. Then the crew has to come in to repair it. What is our repair crew called? Cholesterol. So the cholesterol comes in and it puts a patch over there. We thought that the cholesterol was the problem. No, the problem was the number of cars on there and the damage that they're causing. And what are those so what are those things called? So we try to correct that. I'm going to show you how we can correct that. But let me just continue on. What else we got here? All right. What else do we have? We have HSCRP. The other thing that we look at this very carefully. HSCRP, I like that to be less than 1. Now, your laboratory you get, I'm going to show you in this video why when y'all see y'all's labs and y'all see a bunch of green, you say, oh, I'm good. You don't even pay attention to it. But I'm going to show you in the part of the video why our lab range is so different than what I call my optimal range. These are my ranges, my optimal ranges. Okay. Now, in the lab ratio, the apolipoprotein B was okay. It's not okay with me. And the HSCRP, anything less than 4, I believe is what it was, 4 or 5, was okay. But to me, it has to be less than 1. What is HSCRP? High sensitive C-reactive protein. It means you've got some inflammation in your body. And that inflammation can either be because you got a toothache. So I try to differentiate between inflammation in your vessels, because inflammation in your vessels, the inflammation goes to your head, called your carotid arteries. The inflammation in the vessels go into your heart or your coronary arteries. That's what I'm looking at with the HSCRP. So I want to differentiate that between the inflammation that may be going on from you having a cold or a cough or the flu or some other inflammation going on if you cut your finger. So I also will get a regular homocysteine levels, and where did I get that? Is it on here? I thought I saw that on here. Oh my, our HSCRP was elevated. I thought I saw just a regular SED rate on there. But anyway, the SED rate and everything was normal. I thought I saw it on there. Maybe it's another patient. All right. So it means that there was no infection in the body. There was no inflammation in the body going on because the SED rate, the general SED rate was okay. but the HSCRP is not optimized. That means that there's inflammation in those vessels, those coronary vessels, those carotid vessels. That's a risk factor. Okay, it's a risk factor for a heart attack and a stroke. All right. So even though the triglyceride and the HDL LDL ratio, that looks good. But quit looking at the green stuff all the time. All right. The ApoB protein, these are the little extra things that I look at just to kind of see what this ApoB represents. What kind of those little small cars are out there? Are they filled with stuff? Are they big? Because if they're big trucks and they're bumping into everything, somebody says that's better. I don't think so, but it's better. So they got HDL large, and they got all these other things. So I pull all these together underneath this main thing to see what the risk is. Then you look down here. I want to see how much fat is in your liver. I want to see how your liver's been doing. This GGT tells me, whether or not you've been drinking alcohol. This level is okay. The GGT and ALT is okay. So the liver is not that resistant yet. Okay. Then I want to see what your metabolism is. And so I look at your metabolism by looking at your free T3. I'm waiting on the T4 to make sure that they got enough thyroid. T3 and T4 are thyroid. T3 tells me your active thyroid, what's allowing you to be active every single day. The T3 level is indeed 3 to 4. Again, I'd like to get these numbers not so close to the lower number, but closer to that higher number. That's that optimal level. So that metabolism can do better. And that includes exercise, okay? PSA, this is a male, that was normal. And then I didn't get the vitamin D level, which I almost always need to do, primarily because, again, if you have cancer cells in your body, you need to know what your vitamin D levels are, because sometimes it tells you whether you'll have a more aggressive cancer if your vitamin D levels are low. So you want to get your vitamin D levels up anyway. All right, that's one patient, okay? Next patient, this is a 41-year male starting to the weight loss program and PhD complete program. This person is getting started on it. I just met this person. Person came to the office. So they got some work to do. So we got to start the anti-inflammatory diet. I got to do the VO2 max to see how deconditioned they are. So we're going to do all of those things. And the person wants to start on GLP-1 drugs, tirzepatide. So we're going to start on this tirzepatide and see how it does. Now, basically, we do this every 12 weeks. We go and get this lab work done and see if it's improving on this dose of tirzepatide. If it is improving, cool. We'll keep you there. If it is not improving, we bump it up a little bit. And then we bump it up again a little bit. But if it's not improving at that particular point in time, then I say, hey, these drugs aren't going to work for you. Or if the drugs are causing too many symptoms, or if you can't take the shots, or if you don't have the money, these drugs aren't going to work for you. Bariatric surgery is indeed an option. Okay. So the GLP-1s and the bariatric surgery, no different as far as being tools in the tool chest. They are. Okay. Some people have already tried these GLP-1 drugs. Hey, don't try that stuff on me. It doesn't work for me. Well, like I said, then I began to ask, okay, did they get lab work on you, or did they just give you a prescription? They just give you a prescription and say, hey, we'll see you next time. And then when they see you next time, they just put your feet on a scale and weigh you. No, that's not quite how it works. You got to look at the data. That's data. All right. This is another lab. All right. And basically, this is a 47-year-old male. Okay. Look at this. Fasting glucose is normal. These are my optimal levels. These are my levels. Look at the almost all. No, I'm sorry. These are my optimal levels. This is what the results were. Look at this. So his results were basically 112. My optimal level is 70 to 89. It's elevated. The fasting insulin is 24. I got a relative who's fasting insulin at 17. They said it was normal. I said, no, my optimal levels is between 3 and 6. All right. HOMA, we figured that out with the addition, the vision formula. Hemoglobin A1C. The result was 6. The 5.4 is where I want it. It's elevated. Look at all the red over there. This is my red. Total cholesterol is elevated. HDL cholesterol, triglyceride, all these things are unfavorable. The most important ones right here is 136. Less than 90 is what I want it to be. It's very high. Okay. And then all the particle sizes and all that. But again, even in the liver shows a little bit of insulin resistance there. AST and ALT is elevated. I like it to be less than 35. Okay. PSA is normal, 0.9, the normal limits. Now, this is a person, he's 47 years old, lost 97 pounds following GLP-1 therapy. You think they would be great, right? But what they did was they lost 97 pounds. They did their measurement on the scale. It's like, I'm doing great, right, Doc? No, no, because the most of the weight loss was muscle mass. And muscle mass actually kind of reversed some of the things that was going on. So don't look at that scale and say, hey, I'm healthy. This person is at extreme risk, even though they've lost 97 pounds on GLP-1. They thought that loss of 97 pounds was a victory. Does that look like a victory to you guys? Doesn't look like a victory to me at all. And so we've got to correct that. So this person was taking the GLP-1 drugs, but didn't change what they were putting into their mouths, didn't change their fiber intake, didn't change their protein intake. The weight just started coming off. They said, I ain't got to do all this stuff. It's coming on off, right? Wrong. And that's the example of it. All right. Oh, I was going to show you all one thing. Let me stop sharing here. And I was going to show you the kind of the protein that I take in. I started showing you all this one time. It's not the best protein in the world, but it's not expensive. It's get 45 grams. I take 3 or 4 of these a day because I'm not that hungry because my butyrate is activated and my GLP-1 is up. And I take a low dose GLP-1 because of the inflammation. Okay, but let me go back. I wanted to show you all a different one. Let me stop the share here. See if I can go back to where's my Amazon page? This is on here. I had an Amazon page here. Let me see if I can share that screen. Zoom. Share. Try again. So this is another one that's not that expensive. 40 grams of protein. You take in 40 grams of protein in 3 times a day, it's 120 grams. We should all be getting greater than 100 grams. Okay. If you want to get technical and let me tell you the right amount, 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram. Yeah. But and there's a lot of reasons to take that protein other than just muscle maintenance because all your enzyme systems in your body depend on protein as well. But I just kind of wanted to show you, this is what I liked about it, was that it has 9 grams of carbs in it, but 5 grams of fiber. Even this, even this one right here that I have, it only has 2 grams of fiber. But the more fiber, the better. The more fiber I combine it with this, the more fiber I'm going to be feeding my microbiome. I'm going to be blunting my HDL, my LDL cholesterol, and I'm going to be lowering my insulin. So we got, oops, if I can keep it on that. And yeah, 40 grams of protein. 3 of those a day, you're cool. And you can take it with food if you want to. Basically, when I get ready to have my brunch, have me an avocado, 2 eggs, and I'll have me a protein shake. So the 2 eggs adds on about 10 grams of protein. So it's not going to be too much. Let me see what else. So it looks like this. It's called, what does it look like? On optimum nutrition. All right. Very good. All right. So anyway, I'm now going to go to and show you this video. Okay. If I can get to it. Decoding the cellular fire. Let's try that. This is 725 webinar foods. All right, cinematics. Let's try this one, okay?
Welcome to this explain.
All right. Now, this is one I may stop every now and then because, again, this was one we did before. And sometimes I'll do it in cinematic form, and I'll ask you guys to make a decision how you want to see it. But this is going to be not in cinematic form, mostly in explainer form. Some of the words he's going to say NL3RP and NLRP3, I'm sorry, NLR3P, P3, one of those, is an inflammasome. And it's going to show you what we're trying to avoid, how certain foods activate these inflammasomes. Even though it doesn't feel bad in your intestinal tract, you get leaky gut, and those inflammatory molecules from food, from bread, from pasta, from Chick-fil-A, those inflammasomes are what turns on our inflammatory system. And it just talks about that briefly. I just kind of want you to kind of get that image in your head a little bit. And they do a pretty decent job at getting the image in your head. And then once you get that information in your body, it doesn't matter if you're losing weight because you're losing muscle mass and you got the inflammation in your body and you haven't changed your root cause of the problem, because the root cause of obesity, the root cause of diabetes, root cause of some cancers, the root cause of a dementia is the insulin resistance, the very first slide I showed you. Okay? So you losing weight, looking at that scale with your numbers going down is not the barometer that we use. That's not going to be our tool. We're going to use your lab work and I mean, to me, even the waist to height ratio is better than the scale. Anyway, let me go ahead and show this, and I'll make sure I can think everybody can probably hear it. Products you recommend with fiber. Doc, I need something with no milk. Okay. So the person who needs something with no milk, they got soy protein. If you're allergic to the lactose in the milk, they got soy milk. They got almond milk, coconut milk. If you're just allergic to milk altogether, you don't like milk altogether, there's soy and plant protein powder. So you can mix that with water. All right. Let me see. Now I got to pull this up out the way and get. So I'm gonna turn my camera off so you can see.
Today, we're diving straight in to vividly unpack the invisible biological fire that is likely happening inside your cells right this very second. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how you can permanently extinguish it. Listen, if you've ever struggled with fatigue, brain fog, or stubborn weight that just won't budge no matter what you do, you are absolutely in the right place. Let's get started. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the silent cellular fire, pushing the inflammatory button, throwing the fire blanket, foods that shield your cells, why normal labs actually miss the full picture, and finally, your optimal metabolic target zones. All right, section 1, the silent cellular fire, a hidden metabolic threat. Seriously, imagine that for a second. It sounds like the plot of a sci-fi thriller, right? But this is exactly what happens with cellular inflammation. Because you can't physically feel this microscopic alarm ringing inside your tissues, you can eat inflammatory foods for years, honestly even decades, without ever realizing your internal tissues, blood vessels, and your intestinal tract are actively inflamed. It's kind of like having an allergic reaction inside your body that gives you absolutely no physical symptoms on the outside. No hives, no rash, nothing. Now you might be wondering, why does this matter so much? Well, this silent, invisible process is actually the root cause behind 80 to 90% of all chronic illnesses. It is the absolute core driver of insulin resistance. You see, when your cells are constantly inflamed, your body loses its metabolic flexibility. Basically, it loses the ability to easily switch between burning sugar and burning fat. So what happens? Your liver is forced to take all those excess dietary sugars and turn them directly into toxic fat.
So you'll see me pause it every now and then because I want that certain sentences to sink in. The liver can hold about 100 grams of carbohydrates. When we force it, and the muscle uses it all the time, so we don't count the muscle. So you got two storage places, either in the liver as glycogen. When you get up to 100, then it's either going to do one or two things, depending upon how insulin resistant your fat cells are. The fat will almost always take it. The fat is almost like little Mikey. It'll take anything. But if it doesn't start as fat, because like I said, the fat is kind of the last resort, it'll continue to try to push it into the liver beyond 100 grams. When it pushes it beyond 100 grams in the liver as glycogen, it turns into fat. It's called de novo lipogenesis. That fat in the liver, our main detoxification system of our body, our liver and our kidneys, but in our liver, when we get insulin resistance in our liver, it's a bad thing. Okay. So, and that's where a lot of our problems come in. So, one of our core goals is to get the fat out of the liver and keep that liver, that glycogen in the liver as low as possible, so that again you begin to burn more and more in the fat, developing ketones, stimulating your GLP-1. So I'll just occasionally pause it here and there. I hope not to interrupt it too much.
Moving right along to section 2, pushing the inflammatory button, the microscopic chain reaction. Okay, let's get into the biology here, but we'll keep it super simple, like 10th grade biology level. The biological starting point for almost all this metabolic damage is something called the NLRP3 inflammasome.
See, I got that wrong. NLR3P. I said NLR3P. It's NLRP3. Don't have to worry about that. That main word right there is an inflammatory. It means there's some inflammation going on. It's getting ready to tell your body that you're inflamed. So you don't have to have a rash or a reaction or anything or shortness of breath inside your body. Your body's getting ready to become inflamed because of this particular thing here. This is just a brief little science trick.
Just think of this as your body's microscopic emergency smoke detector. It just sits there inside your cells waiting, and when it senses danger, it sounds the alarm. And that alarm actively and aggressively pumps out powerful pro-inflammatory cytokines, specifically IL-1 beta and IL-18. So how does this actually play out? Here's the exact microscopic chain reaction. Step 1, you eat some refined carbs, let's say a sugary soda or a big bowl of mac and cheese. This causes a massive rapid sugar spike in your blood. Step 2, this rapid spike puts your cells under intense stress, creating what we can think of as toxic cellular exhaust, also known as oxidative stress. Step 3, this toxic exhaust acts as a flare, signaling a specific helper protein called TXNIP.
Yeah. Again, these. I apologize for these letters, but basically, what it's saying is it's getting ready to turn on the alarm, and that alarm brings cells that brings inflammation. The key is inflammation. The key is inflammation. So that's what I want you to take away from this segment. You're going to have inflammation. What we're going to do about it, that's what's coming up next. Okay.
Step 4, this is the crazy part. TXNIP physically moves and acts as the literal finger that pushes the button to turn on that NLRP3 smoke detector. Once that button gets pushed, your cells start screaming for help and that silent fire begins. Which brings us to section 3, throwing the fire blanket, artificial shields versus natural blocks. Let's contrast two incredibly powerful ways we can actually put out this fire. On the left, we've got synthetic GLP-1 drugs. Now, your body naturally produces native GLP-1 to put out inflammation, but it's really fragile.
Okay, so our body normally puts out GLP-1. That's what we want to do with the surgery. We want to prolong that exposure to our own GLP-1, because otherwise I got to give you GLP-1 drugs, and I often do. I often supplement them with your weight loss, but again, I've got to wean you off of the inflammatory foods that you put in your body. I got to wean you off of the inflammatory foods. And that's not an overnight thing. So as we're beginning to teach your body how to heal from the inflammatory foods, the GLP-1 will help kind of squash that inflammation. Now, so you got GLP-1. If we can get your own GLP-1 up as elevated as possible, cool. If we can't, then I'll add a little microdose along with it. Okay?
It gets destroyed in minutes by an enzyme called DPP4. Synthetic GLP-1 to put out inflammation, but it's really fragile. It gets destroyed in minutes by an enzyme called DPP4. Synthetic GLP-1 medications, though, are chemically modified to resist this enzyme. So they act like a massive, indestructible, soundproof fire blanket that gets thrown right over that NLRP3 alarm, just completely silencing it for days. It's highly effective. But over on the right, we have a natural root cause blockade, and that's fasting. When you fast, your liver creates a molecule called beta hydroxybutyrate, or BHB. BHB travels to your cells and acts as a physical block, stopping that NLRP3 smoke detector from even assembling in the first place. It's literally your body's built-in natural off switch. So let's talk about section 4, foods that shield your cells, building your native defenses. These right here are your anti-inflammatory pillars. Healthy, unsaturated fats like cold-pressed olive oil and avocados actively promote tissue repair. DHA-rich seafood like wild-caught salmon totally calms your immune system down. When you eat...
Just want to mention, I'm pulling together because wild-caught salmon ain't cheap. At Costco it may be, but not. So I'm pulling together a list of foods like sardines, like canned tuna, things like that that can actually do the same thing that won't cost an arm and a leg. Okay, so that list we'll have on it for next week. But I started thinking about, okay, if olive oil I use all the time. Avocados, I love them, and along with my eggs and all that. And cruciferous vegetables are all cool. But I like I said, I use a lot of protein shakes. So if I eat a wild caught salmon for dinner, it's primarily kind of a celebration. I don't obviously I wish I could eat it every day, but number one, I'd probably get tired of it. Number two, couldn't afford it. So anyway, I'll show you some of my canned tuna that I have and some sardines. Sardines took me a little while to get used to, but I did. And that's probably one of the best anti-inflammatory foods you can take in. Okay? All right. Let's start again here.
Unsaturated fats like cold-pressed olive oil and avocados actively promote tissue repair. DHA-rich seafood like wild-caught salmon totally calms your immune system down. When you eat complex carbs like lentils, black beans, and broccoli, you are literally feeding the good bacteria in your gut, and they ferment those fibers into a healing compound called butyrate. Soluble fiber like psyllium husk helps trigger your own native GLP-1. And honestly, my favorite on this list is turmeric. Its active compound, curcumin, works a lot like fasting. It physically blocks that NLRP3 smoke detector from ever turning on.
That's important. I don't use a lot of turmeric because I don't cook. But when my wife is around, she uses it all the time, curcumin, and that's important because it directly blocks the NLR3P. I don't know why I want to say that NLR3P. You think I know better? NLRP3. Is there a group out there, a singing group that's NLRP3? No, NLR3P, NLRP3. But anyway, curcumin. All these things are relatively simple. Get some olive oil, get some avocados, get some cruciferous vegetables, whether it's asparagus or whether it's Brussels sprouts, because the next section is going to show you what we commonly do and what the problem is. Okay.
But we also really have to know what to avoid. Food engineers know exactly what they're doing with something called the dopamine trap. When you mix fats and refined carbohydrates on the exact same plate, think about dipping bread in oil or eating mac and cheese right next to a fatty steak. It hyperstimulates your brain's dopamine reward center. This specific combo literally overrides your natural fullness signals, triggers intense, practically uncontrollable cravings, and rains that whole cellular fire all over again.
I wanted to pause that because I wanted to kind of hang on that for a second. So the diet that we eat is inflammatory, all right? And so when we eat bread, that's inflammatory. When we eat pasta, that's inflammatory. Pizza, all those things are inflammatory. And it's because when we eat, there's a great study, and I'm going to start putting the studies up here so that if y'all can screenshot them, and you can read them yourself. You can load them into Chat GPT and say, explain this study to me. All right. So You put bread, which is a carbohydrate, refined carbohydrate, associated with fat. The studies show that you markedly stimulate your mesolimbic system, your dopamine system, your I want it more system. So what do you do when you want it more? You want it more the next day. You want it more for breakfast. You want it for lunch. You want it for dinner. You always want to have some part of fat, even if you have salmon. If you have that salmon and bread, it's inflammation. If you have salmon and mashed potatoes, it's inflammation. If you have steak and mashed, it's the fat plus the refined carbohydrate. That refined carbohydrate is giving you that inflammation. But that combination of fat and refined carbohydrates makes it you want it more. So it's almost impossible to break that cycle. But you cannot break it if you're not aware of it. If you don't know that it's a problem, because that's the way food always comes out. They feed you the appetizer and give you some bread and put you some butter on it. That's your appetizer. That stimulates your I want. So when they give you that menu, I want it all. Let me see. Let me get the biggest steak. Let me get the sweet potato. Let me get this. Let me get the dessert. Your mesolimbic system has been stimulated to I want just because you put the carbohydrate with the fat, the bread, and the butter. All right. So you got to change that. But like I said, if you didn't know it, what are you going to change? So instead of doing that, what we're going to do is take away that bread. What we're going to do is take away those mashed potatoes, refined carbohydrates. What we're going to do is to take away that macaroni and cheese with that filet. We're going to put some cruciferous vegetables there, some asparagus, some broccoli, some Brussels sprouts, some green leafy vegetables there. Those aren't refined carbohydrates associated with that fatty food. You get where I'm going? Okay. So if you just begin to start slowly change your habit, it takes time in order for that to change. Literally, the studies have shown that you can change it within 2 weeks if you consistently do it. But you gotta break the cycle. And breaking the cycle means that you gotta stop the I want part of the brain. And the I want part is stimulated by this and this, or this and this. Okay? All right. Turn off the video.
So the overarching framework here is what we call the 4 pillars of metabolic engineering. Fasting gives you that protective BHB. Fiber triggers your body's native GLP-1. Protein provides the building blocks for muscle. But look really closely at fitness here. While walking is fantastic, resistance training is non-negotiable because active muscles secrete healing proteins called myokines. And I really want you to note the aging factor here. As we get older, our muscles become a bit more insulin resistant. They just need a much louder signal to activate. So while a younger person might only need resistance training 2 to 3 times a week, older individuals really should aim for 5 to 6 times a week to get those exact same incredible metabolic benefits.
Bet you didn't know that, did you? But you didn't know that the older you get, you gotta holler a little bit louder at those muscles. So I'm not saying I'm on my older age, as you all might call it, but I exercise. I do resistance training every single day. I don't do 30 minutes a day, but I will do resistance training to make sure my strength is almost every single day. So I'll do some dumbbells almost every single day. I may only do 10 minutes worth. But as long as I know that I'm doing progressive resistance training, I'm not exactly sure where this time figure that you got to spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour in the gym. I'm not sure where that came from. But as long as you're stressing your muscle with progressive resistance training, to me, as long as you're doing it, as long as your muscles are being maintained with protein resistance training, you're on the right track.
All right, moving to section 5. Why normal labs miss it, the flaw in standard averages.
Listen to this very carefully.
This is absolutely crucial to understand. A normal lab result from your doctor does not automatically mean your cellular fire alarms are fully quieted. Not at all. Standard laboratory reference intervals merely reflect the average of an increasingly unhealthy general population.
Those lab normals that I showed you, that's saying that when you get all green, everything is okay. That came the way that they developed those values. They found those values. They took the population of what they call healthy individuals. Now, how many of us in this United States are healthy individuals? When the data out there is quoting that 80% of the American population is insulin resistant, then taking a sample size from those individuals that are insulin resistant that are quote unquote partially sick, that's going to give you some wide range of lab values. Those are not optimal. Those are everybody else out there, and that's the average range that everybody else got. So they define what they call as healthy as somebody who report them when they got their population pool. Well, I don't have a cold, I don't have a flu, I don't have this. I walk every day. Okay, you're healthy enough. Let me get your labs. And then they pulled thousands and thousands and thousands of that data, and they made the range. Kind of a crude method, but out of that method, then the scientists go ahead and did some research and basically said, okay, fine. What is the real quote optimal range we want people to be in when they're healthy? So I'm just trying to say you can pay attention to those green zones that say you're okay, you're normal. But if we got a goal towards, there's going to be certain ones that we're going to look very, very carefully at. They say your sodium is normal, I'm okay with that. Say your potassium is normal, I'm okay with that. Because those things don't have a whole lot to do with metabolic health. When they tell me that your fasting insulin is 17, but it's normal, I ain't okay with that. And it's normal in their lab. I want yours down to be less than 5. All right. Don't mean to preach so much here. That's my last, I think, my remark.
Let that sink in. If you want to know if you are truly healing, you cannot aim for average. You have to aim for optimal. And that leads us perfectly into section 6, optimal metabolic target zones, the blueprint for measurement. Let's look at the actual numbers you need. Take high sensitivity C-reactive protein, or HSCRP. It's the ultimate marker for systemic inflammation. Standard labs say anything under 3.0 is fine, but to ensure your internal tissues are truly calm, you really want that under 0.5. Fasting insulin, which measures your overall metabolic stress, is often accepted all the way up to 25, but optimally, it should be tightly held between 3.0 and 8.0 so you catch insulin resistance early. Your SED rate, which is a great measure of chronic immune status, should ideally be under 10. And for liver health, ALT should ideally be under 25. And while we're talking about the liver, you should also be looking at your SGOT, which is also known as AST, along with your GGT, to fully rule out silent metabolic liver fat and biliary stress. These are the primary markers that actually prove your internal fires are going out. Now, beyond your standard lipid panel, your ApoB target is incredibly crucial. Apolipoprotein B is a primary baseline marker for evaluating those active plaque-forming lipoprotein particles floating around in your cardiovascular system. While standard labs might not flag a risk until you hit 120, your optimal target is well below 80. And honestly, for advanced protection, you want to see that number even below 60 to 65. Checking these secondary markers gives you the complete picture. IL-6 is another key inflammatory cytokine, ideally kept under 1.0. Your HbA1c, which is just an average of your blood sugar over the last 3 months, is optimal when it's sitting between 4.5 and 5.3%. And we absolutely 100% must check active thyroid hormones like free T3 and storage free T4 right alongside your baseline TSH. Checking these ensures there are no hidden endocrine blocks standing in the way of your metabolic repair. If your thyroid is sluggish, your whole metabolic engine just isn't going to run efficiently. Which really brings us to our conclusion for today. Whether you use fasting, an anti-inflammatory Mediterranean diet or a temporary GLP-1 pharmacological shield, the ultimate goal is exactly the same. You must use any temporary biological window of peace, when your cravings are finally gone and your inflammation is shielded, to actually fix the root cause with sustainable native lifestyle habits. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question. Next time you look at your plate of food, ask yourself, are you feeding the fire with refined carbs and toxic cellular exhaust? Or are you extinguishing it with fiber, healthy fats, and protein? The science shows us exactly how to heal. Now, it's just time to put it on your plate. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I can't wait to see you next time.
Very good. All right, so I like that video because it kind of when um, y'all see that on your lab work, I want you to kind of take a close look at the lab and figure out if those are optimal. I was trying to figure out whether I can. I tell you all every week that I put these things on our new website, peachtreebariatrics.com. I guess because, yeah, here you go. You can see it now. Peachtreebariatrics.com. And in this area here is the Learning Center. Now you got articles and you got the weekly webinar. So you click on the weekly webinar, and it's kind of we're going to change this every week. This is me looking kind of goofy there, but this is kind of what you'll do is you'll play it. Which you can see here how long it is, but you can skip through that. You don't have to hear all my corny jokes and all my commentary and things of that nature. This is the website, and like I said, I'm not a learning center. You can go to articles. One of the articles that I have out there is GLP-1 and dual agonist weight loss medications. Why the benefits may go beyond the scale. That's what I'm talking about. I use the GLP-1 drugs primarily because to decrease the inflammation while I'm trying to decrease your inflammation by educating you about the foods that you eat. So it kind of gives you a lot of stuff. And basically this tells you all the services. We do the medical weight loss, which is the GLP-1 drugs. We even do the new tummy tuck. We do the tummy tuck if you have after you lose the weight. Most people have excess skin. And so sometimes the insurance companies will pay for it. Sometimes the insurance won't pay for it. So we say start the penniculectomy check to see if your insurance company pays for it, or if you want to skip it, you want to go to financing, it takes you to the financing. This is the financing page, so forth. Okay. Financing will then it's okay, fine. I want to see my payment plan. It asks you what surgery are you interested in? I've had all this stuff. Oh yeah, I'm interested in the penniculectomy. And these are the abdominoplasty, the penniculectomy. Penniculectomy is when I just cut off the skin, put you back together again. Abdominoplasty is when I shape that abdominal wall. But these are some of the most competitive prices in town. Plastic surgeons obviously charge a whole lot more than this. But my core goal is for health. My secondary goal is for you to look good. Okay. So anyway, we're supposed to be able to go back. Okay, here it goes. Says let's go back. So anyway, that's the website, and then like I said, in the learning centers where we have all of that. We got our patient manual. If you don't, this is a perioperative manual, but we tell you all the things in the manual, and all the way through the process of surgery, before and after surgery and all that. So the website, I've tried to improve it to make it sort of your reference point if you're having surgery. And even if, like I say, even if you're not having surgery, GLP-1 and weight loss medicines, things like that. Okay? All right. Well, let me see here. All right. Well, that's it. I really enjoyed today. I really, really did. I hope you guys learned a lot. If you did, Put it in the chat box now before I close that chat box. And let me know if you learned anything new today. If you did, that's cool. Now, put that in the chat box and also take this as the challenge for next week. From what you learned today, or from what you learned from a culmination of today and the previous weeks, what are you going to be able to put into the chat box next week as to the action you take? Because that's, like I said, knowledge is power, but only to the extent that you put it into action. Okay? All right. Very good. Very good. Yes, I've learned a little more this week. Very good. A little more is better. Better. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate it very much. Hope you guys have a great weekend, because I'm going to have one. I'm going to work out. I'm doing my walking, even though it's cloudy today. Do my walking out there and do my resistance training. I'm going to do triceps today. Next week, you're going to see me on this. At some point in time, it's not going to be AI. Right? You guys have a great weekend. See you next week. Bye bye.